My perfect Saturday was shattered by a neighbor demanding I cut down my family's ancient oak. She had no idea her next move would be the biggest mistake of her life. It was a Saturday morning, the kind of perfect, lazy Saturday that feels like a reward for surviving the week. The air was cool, the sun was just starting to burn off the morning haze, and the only thing on my agenda was a fresh pot of coffee and finally replacing the alternator on my old Ford pickup. I was in my happy place, grease under my fingernails, classic rock humming from a beat-up radio in the garage, wearing a pair of faded jeans and a t-shirt so old it was practically a part of me. This was my sanctuary. My time to shut off the part of my brain that's always on high alert, to just be Mark, the guy who likes fixing things. The peace was shattered by a sound that didn't belong in my quiet cul-de-sac. It wasn't a knock, it was a pounding. Sharp, insistent, and dripping with impatience. I sighed, wiping my hands on a rag. Probably a package delivery, though they usually just leave it on the porch. I swung open the door from the garage into my house and headed for the front. Standing on my porch was a woman who looked like she was assembled from a kit labeled Suburban Menace. She had the razor-sharp blonde bob, the expensive-looking athletic wear that had never seen a gym, and a face locked in a permanent expression of smelling something bad. She was jabbing a perfectly manicured finger towards the pride of my front yard, a magnificent 100-year-old oak tree. "Are you the owner of this property?" she asked, her voice a low, grating hiss. She said property like it was a piece of gum she'd just stepped in. I leaned against the doorframe, taking a slow sip of the coffee I'd grabbed on the way. "I am," I said calmly. "Can I help you?" "You can," she snapped, not missing a beat. "That tree, it has to go." I blinked. I've dealt with a lot of strange requests in my line of work, but this was a first for a Saturday morning at home. "I'm sorry, what was that?" "The tree," she repeated, speaking slowly, as if I were a particularly dense child. "It's a nuisance. It's dropping leaves all over my pristine new patio, and into my pool. It's an eyesore, and it's blocking my sunlight. I want it gone. Now." I followed her pointed finger to the oak. Its branches spread wide and strong, a testament to a century of standing its ground. My grandfather planted that tree with his own 2 hands. I learned to climb on those branches. My daughter had a tire swing on one of them for 10 years. That tree was more a part of this family than some of my actual cousins. "Ma'am," I said, my voice still even, "I appreciate you coming to talk to me, but I'm not cutting down that tree. It's been here a lot longer than either of us." Her face soured even further. "I don't think you understand. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. My husband is a very important lawyer, and this tree is a clear violation of property aesthetics. It's decreasing my home value." I took another sip of coffee. "Property aesthetics isn't a legal claim, ma'am, and I can assure you that oak tree is probably increasing. Both are property values. Now, I'm sorry about the leaves in your pool, but that's just part of living near trees." This was clearly the wrong thing to say. A dark flush crept up her neck. "Don't you patronize me. I moved into this neighborhood for peace and quiet, and to enjoy my investment, not to have my weekends ruined by sweeping up your trees' filth." She took a step closer, invading my personal space. I could smell her expensive, cloying perfume. "I am giving you one last chance to do the right thing. You will call a tree service today and have this monster removed. Or I will." A switch flipped inside me. The calm, grease-stained homeowner started to recede, and the part of me I keep locked down on my days off began to surface. Still, I kept my voice level. "You will not touch my tree. You will not hire anyone to touch my tree. You are on my property right now, and I'm asking you to please leave." She let out a short, ugly laugh. "Or what? What are you going to do, old man? Fix your broken truck at me?" She pulled out a diamond-encrusted smartphone from her pocket. "Fine. You want to play it that way? I'll have a crew here within the hour. I'll send you the bill. And if you try to stop them, I'll have you arrested for harassment." I just watched her, my expression unreadable. This was the point of no return. She was making a direct threat to destroy my property. She saw my silence as weakness. A smug, triumphant smirk spread across her face. "In fact," she said, her thumb dancing across the screen, "why wait? Let's get the authorities involved right now. Let's see what the sheriff has to say about your hostile attitude and your dangerous messy tree." Her smile was pure, unadulterated victory as she lifted the phone to her ear. She actually did it. She called 911. She reported a hostile neighbor and a property dispute. I listened as she gave the dispatcher my address, her voice dripping with fabricated fear and righteous indignation. She hung up and crossed her arms, the very picture of entitlement. "The sheriff's deputies are on their way," she sneered. "They'll be here any minute to deal with you. Let's see how tough you are when you're dealing with the actual law." I didn't say a word. I just took a final, long sip from my coffee mug, set it down carefully on the porch rail, and looked her dead in the eye. I gave her a small, tight smile she couldn't possibly understand. Then I slowly reached into the back pocket of my greasy jeans. Her smug expression faltered for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes as my hand reappeared. It wasn't a weapon. It was my old, worn leather wallet. I flipped it open with a practiced flick of the thumb. The polished silver shield of the county sheriff's office caught the morning sun, glinting right in her face. Next to it, my ID card sat behind clear plastic, picture and name clearly visible. Sheriff Mark Reynolds. "The law's already here," I said, my voice dropping into the calm, authoritative tone I use when I'm on the clock. "And ma'am, I can tell you right now, the sheriff thinks your attitude is hostile, and your claims are baseless." For a full 5 seconds, she just stared. Her brain seemed to be short-circuiting, trying to reconcile the grease-stained mechanic in a faded t-shirt with the badge staring her in the face. The triumphant smirk melted, replaced by a slack-jawed confusion. Then denial kicked in, fierce and desperate. "That's a fake," she screeched, pointing a trembling finger at my badge. "You're a fake. You bought that online. Impersonating an officer is a felony. You're going to prison for this." As if on cue, the distant wail of a siren grew closer. A renewed sense of victory washed over her face. "Here they come now. They're going to lock you up for this, you liar." I didn't bother responding. I just stood there, wallet still open in my hand, and waited. A county patrol car, black and white, slowed and pulled up to the curb. 2 deputies got out. I knew them both. Deputy Miller, a good kid, barely 25, and Deputy Sanchez, a solid veteran I'd worked with for over a decade. Miller took the lead, his hand resting professionally on his belt. "We got a call about a disturbance. His voice trailed off as he got a good look at me, then at the furious woman, then back at me. His eyes went wide with recognition, a flash of pure panic crossing his face as he realized who he'd been sent to deal with. "Sheriff?" he stammered, his posture immediately snapping to attention. "Sir, is everything all right?" Sanchez, a few steps behind him, just sighed and tipped his hat slightly. "Morning, Mark. Didn't figure you for the disturbing the peace type." The woman, the Karen, looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Her face cycled through a whole spectrum of emotions: shock, rage, terror, and finally, a sort of cornered animal fury. The game was up. The lie was exposed. But she wasn't the type to surrender. She was the type to double down. "He's intimidating me," she shrieked at the deputies, her voice cracking. "He's using his position to threaten a private citizen. This is abuse of power. You work for me, the taxpayer. Arrest him." Miller looked completely lost, glancing between me and the screaming woman. I gave him a slight nod, a silent order to stand by. I turned my full attention back to her. "Ma'am, let's be very clear about what's happened here," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You came onto my property. You demanded I destroy my property. When I refused, you threatened to hire a crew to illegally come onto my land and do it for me. That's called conspiracy to commit criminal mischief and trespassing. Then you called 911 and filed a false report, claiming I was hostile, wasting valuable county resources. Now you're making false accusations against a law enforcement officer. I count at least 4 potential charges there. How many do you think your husband, the very important lawyer, can get you out of?" The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, but for the first time, no sound came out. She was beaten. Sanchez was already pulling out his notepad, a clear sign they were now taking an official report from me. But it wasn't over. Just as Miller took a step forward to formally ask for her name, We all heard the squeal of tires. A glossy black Mercedes sedan came flying around the corner and screeched to a halt directly behind my deputy's patrol car. The driver's door flew open, and a man in a perfectly tailored, ridiculously expensive suit stormed out. He was tall, with slicked back hair and a face that looked like it was permanently set in an arrogant scowl. He marched right past my deputies as if they were lawn ornaments and planted himself between me and his wife. "What the hell is going on here?" he boomed, his voice oozing privileged authority. "I am her husband, and I am her lawyer. Why are you harassing my wife?" He didn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on Deputy Miller, the younger, more impressionable-looking of the two. "I want your badge number," he snapped, pointing a finger at Miller's chest. "Both of your badge numbers. This is a gross abuse of power and intimidation. My wife is a pillar of this community, and you will not treat her this way." I watched this little peacock puff out his chest, completely oblivious to the reality of the situation. His wife, who had regained a sliver of her bravado now that her champion had arrived, scurried behind him, peeking over his shoulder. Sanchez stepped forward, his expression impassive. "Sir, we're responding to a call that originated from this number," he said, gesturing towards the wife. "We're simply trying to ascertain the facts." "The facts are that this man," the lawyer sneered, finally deigning to look at me, gesturing dismissively at my grease-stained shirt and worn jeans, "is a menace. He threatened my wife when she made a simple, reasonable request about his hazardous tree, a tree that is a clear violation of City Ordinance 74B, subsection C, regarding foliage overhanging public thoroughfares. I had to give him points for trying. The problem was, I wrote Ordinance 74B. Subsection C applies to public sidewalks, Counselor," I said, my voice cutting through his bluster. "My tree is a good 15 feet from the sidewalk." Subsection D, however, notes that malicious destruction of private property over $1,000 in value is a felony. That oak is appraised at about $20,000. How's your legal knowledge on that? He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing silently. His brain was working, the legal gears turning, trying to process why the local handyman knew city ordinances better than he did. He hadn't noticed the badge yet. I was still just the menace next door. "That's enough," I said, stepping forward. I held up my wallet again, placing it directly in his line of sight. "Sheriff Mark Reynolds, and you and your wife are standing on my lawn." The lawyer's eyes locked onto the badge. Unlike his wife, he understood its significance immediately. The arrogance didn't just fade, it evaporated. The color drained from his face and his power stance crumbled. He looked from the badge to my face, then to the two deputies standing at attention, and finally to his wife, who was now trying to become invisible behind his expensive suit. "Mark, Sheriff Reynolds," he stammered, his entire demeanor changing. "There must be a misunderstanding." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied, snapping the wallet shut and tucking it away. "Your wife trespassed, threatened to destroy my property, and then filed a false police report when she didn't get her way. You then arrived and attempted to intimidate my deputies. That's a pretty clear picture from where I'm standing." The lawyer started sweating. "Look, she can be a little high-strung. The move has been stressful. She didn't mean anything by it." He turned to his wife. "Apologize to the sheriff, honey. Right now." She looked horrified, but under his fierce glare, she mumbled something that sounded vaguely like, "Sorry." I shook my head. "It's a little late for that. Sanchez, get their information. I want a formal report filed. False reporting is a serious offense. It ties up resources that could be needed for a real emergency." Panic flared in the lawyer's eyes. "Please, Sheriff. A report like that, it could affect my standing with the bar. My wife, she'll pay for any cleanup. We'll have a pool service clean up the leaves every week. Anything. Just, can't we let this be a neighborly warning?" I looked at him, then at his wife, who now looked small and genuinely frightened. I looked at the oak tree, its branches swaying gently in the breeze, completely unbothered. I could have thrown the book at them. I could have made their lives a living hell for the next few months. And a part of me, the part that was tired of arrogance and entitlement, wanted to. But I also saw two people who had just learned a very public, very humiliating lesson. That was often more effective than any fine or court date. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. You're going to make a $500 donation to the Policemen's Benevolent Association. You're going to bring me the receipt by the end of the day. You're going to learn the meaning of the word neighborly, which doesn't involve threats or lawyers, and your wife is never ever to call 911 unless there is a genuine emergency. If I so much as hear a whisper about my tree again, the next conversation we have will be in my office, and you'll be the one addressing me as Sheriff. Do you understand me? He nodded so fast I thought his head might come loose. Yes, Sheriff, absolutely, crystal clear. Good, I said. Now get off my property. They practically ran to their car. I watched them speed away, then turned to Miller and Sanchez. Miller still looked a little shell-shocked. Sanchez just grinned. You enjoy your day off, Mark? He asked, tucking his notepad away. It's getting better, I said, walking back towards my garage. The smell of coffee and motor oil filled the air. My truck was still waiting. My Saturday was back. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got an alternator to replace.